In this fun with numbers story, this one is called $4.50. It's a terrible thing to call a cowboy a deadbeat, but in Shorty Long's case it was true. He owed everybody money, from Big Oscar the blacksmith to Widow McCrae, who ran the Silver Dollar Cafe and baked the best biscuits west on the Rockies. Shorty ain't a bad sort. He just hate to pay for anything he thinks he could get free. Big Oscar told the widow one afternoon over coffee at the Silver Dollar. The widow brought Oscar another plate of biscuits. How am I going to keep this place going if folks won't pay their bills? Shorty's the worst. He owes me $4.50. Big Oscar shook his head. You got as much chance of collecting that money as seeing Custer ride back from the Little Bighorn. Widow McCrae picked up her rolling pin. That's what you think. I'm joining out at Circle K this afternoon. If Shorty won't pay any owes, I'll lay him on a flatter in the bottom of the skillet. As soon as Oscar left, Widow McCrae hitched her 2 horses, Clementine and Evangeline, to the backboard and drove out to the Circle K ranch. Duck Pooley saw her coming. He rode back to the corral to warn Shorty. Widow McCrae's coming. She's got a rolling pin in her hand and an awful meaning look in her eye. You better come up with that money, Shorty. Boys, you gotta help me, Shorty yelped. Why don't you just pay what you owed? It ain't that simple. If I pay the widow back, everybody owe money to accept the same. I end up broker and a mess of eggs. The Circle K boys decided to help Shorty out just for the fun of seeing what would happen. They knocked together a few boards to make a coffin. When Widow McCrae drove up, she found Shorty laying in it. He looked real peaceful. The Circle K boys stood around bubbling, wiping their noses on their sleeves. Widow McCrae got down from the buckboard. What happened to Shorty? She asked. He's got it to the last roundup, the Circle K boys told her. A bronco threw him. He landed on his head. The widow leaned over for a closer look. Shorty looked dead in a Christmas tree in August. But she still wasn't sold, although she kept her suspicions to herself. Poor Shorty. It hurts my heart to see him like this. Where do you boys figure out burying him? Why, here on the ranch, somewheres. Widow McCrae frowned. That's not right. Shorty deserves better than such brown brushing coyotes. I know you don't have time to spare. What the spring roundup coming on. But if you let me take Shorty back to town, I'll see he gets a decent burial. The Circle K boys could hardly refuse. Then it's settled. Some of you boys loaded Shorty onto the buckboard, trying to bounce him around too much. I'll nail it down, Duck Pooley volunteered. Not just yet, said Widow McCrae. I want to see him one last time before I put him in the ground. Shorty Long was my friend. That sure was news to Shorty. He didn't say a word, but he was thinking hard mostly about what he liked to do to Duck Pooley. With the coffin loaded, Widow McCrae headed back towards town. She turned off onto the Boot Hill Road. Boot Hill is where they bury cowboys like Shorty, who died with their boots on. It's a mighty rough road for the feller's last journey. Widow McCrae reined in at the top of the hill next to a freshly dug grave. She got down from the buckboard, unhitched the horses, and turned them loose to graze. Then she took hold on the coffin and dragged it out off of a wagon. Shorty saw stars when the coffin hit the ground, but he was bound and determined not to pay for the $4.50, so he lay still. The widow studied him hard. Can you hear me, Shorty? If you can't, listen good. I don't know if you're dead or not, but I'm going to keep my eye on you all night. If you aren't moving by morning, into the ground you go. Poor Shorty. It was pay up or be buried alive, and he couldn't make up his mind which was worse. The sun went down, with Widow McCrae's eyes fixed on him tight. Shorty lay still in his coffin, not moving a muscle, not hardly breathing, waiting for something to happen. On about midnight, something did. Riders. He heard them coming up the Boot Hill Road. Widow McCrae ducked behind a tombstone. As for Shorty, he was sure he was puzzled of dead cowboys running back to the grave for one last roundup. He lay in his coffin, stiff as rawhide, hoping that with all the graves up there wouldn't notice one extra corpse. 3 riders ran to the top of the boot hill. They got off their horses. One lit a lantern while the other 2 lugged an iron strongbox over to the open grave. Anyone would recognize them at once. It was Big-Nosed George Parrott and 2 of his gang, Smiley Dumplap and the Oregon Kid. The Outlaws started bragging about the trade that they came to the graveyard to divide the loot. No one would think of looking for outlaws on Boot Hill. Not live ones, anyway. Shorty was in a heap of trouble. If those outlaws caught him spying on them, he wouldn't have to worry about being a fake horse. Big-Nosed George drew his 6th gun. "Stand back, boys! I'll settle this business." He fired a shot into a strongbox padlock. Shorty nearly gave up the ghost. He thought the bullet was meant for him. "Yahoo! We struck it rich!" The Oregon Kid kicked open the lid. He and Smiley reached inside and began throwing fistfuls of $100 bills into the air. That made Big-Nosed George real mad. "Quit that clowning! This ain't the circus! You boys pick up the greenbacks and put 'em back where you found 'em." "Aw, George, nothing. We're going to divvy it up business-like. No grabbing." The Kid and Smiley started picking up the money. One of the bills landed in Shorty's coffin. "Holy Hannah! What's this? There's a dead un here. Don't drop your britches, boys. Dead uns don't bite." Big-Nosed George said over for a closer look. "Why, it's some poor cowpoke whose bang had to wait till morning. That should cover him up, though. I ain't decent leaving a fellow out in the open where the buzzards could get at him. But they are none of the concern. Bring over them bills and let's get started." "Can't we close the coffin first?" the Kid asked. "Dead uns give me the willies." "Sure, go ahead," said Big-Nosed George. The Kid slammed the coffin lid right down on Shorty's nose. Tears come to Shorty's eyes. He clenched his teeth to keep from yelling. "What's the matter?" Smiley asked. "This lid don't fit." "Let me try." Smiley sat down hard in the coffin. He packed a lot of weight. The lid matched Shorty's nose into his face. Shorty saw stars, but none the ones in the sky. "What's keeping you 2? Big-Nosed George growled. "This lid will lay flat." "Let me see." Big-Nosed George had a look. "Are you both crack-brained? Use your eyes. This feller's nose stick up a mile. It's way too long for the coffin." "What'll we do?" "Easy. He don't need a sniffer where he's going. I'll cut it off with my Bowie knife." That was enough for Shorty. He sat up in his coffin and howled, "Hold on, boys! I ain't that dead!" Big-Nosed George nearly dropped his teeth. Smiley let a yell as the whole gang ran for their horses. Those outlaws shot out for their graveyard faster than fireworks. Widow McCrae laughed fit to bust. When she was all laughed out, she came from behind the tombstone and gave Shorty the scalding of his life. "I hope you learned your lesson. You nearly got your nose cut off for $4.50. Shorty was too embarrassed to say anything. He and Widow McCrae gathered up the money the outlaws left behind. In the morning, they took to the railroad agent in town. He gave them a $500 reward to divide between them. Shorty rubbed his nose. "I reckon we're even now." "Not quite," said Widow McCrae. "You still out me $4.50. Shorty said grumbly as he piled up $50 bills. "I don't have no change. How about if I come by tomorrow and set up?" "I accept you," Widow McCrae said, "but so far as anyone knows, he hasn't paid him yet." The end.